Well, we're back in the garage taking another look at the AP1854BV, and that's this bandsaw here. I'm sure you remember last time we had a great deal of trouble trying to lift this heavy bandsaw onto this old metal stand that I had. Well, I've actually decided to go ahead and try and make a base plate for this today because it was only temporarily clamped on, and I've also gone ahead and purchased that metal cutting blade that we talked about, so hopefully we can have a go at cutting some steel today. Well, as you can see, I was only temporarily able to just put the saw on top of here using some G-clamps, because if I was trying to sit this on top of the base it will fall through the hole in the middle, so I need to find a piece of steel to actually infill that, and then we can bolt this thing down. So this is my old original bandsaw, which is an Elektra Beckum Bas 315. Now, I actually bought this saw second hand about 10 years ago, and I think I paid about 50 or 60 pounds for it, not very much money at all. Now, on the whole, this has actually been a pretty good machine. It's cut any piece of wood that I've put in front of it. It has a fairly large and powerful motor, and it's very heavy and well constructed. Well, I say it's well constructed. This saw has an Achilles heel, and that was always the blade guides, which are made out of some kind of sintered zinc powder, something like that. Anyway, over the time that I've had this machine, I've gone through 3 or 4 blade guides, and each time I replace those parts it cost me 30 or 40 pounds, and eventually I've just got sick of replacing them. I also don't have room in my shop for 2 saws, so the new saw can cut wood and also metal, so this Elektra Beckum, I'm afraid it has to go. Now, it is worth saying, if you've got one of these Elektra Beckum Bas 315 saws, somebody does make a third-party upgrade to the blade guide, and everybody who fits it says that it works very well. But I'm afraid I just don't want this saw anymore, and you know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to say, well, it's a shame to get rid of it, I wish you'd give it to me. Well, the problem is, it would sit in my workshop for another 10 years, I would trip over it, and eventually, you know, it'll still end up going to the tip. So what I'm going to do today, you can see that the saw's got this base plate on, so I'm going to try and cut that off, and I'm going to stand my new machine onto the old plate. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this large electric motor, because I think this will be a much better motor than the one I've currently got on my powered hacksaw, which came off a very old and feeble Clark's drill press. So again, we're going to salvage as many parts as we can off the old bandsaw. It's a shame to let it go, but well, sometimes these things have got to be done. And I think we'll start off with some weight reduction, because I think we can just take these doors off. Are these going to lift off? They look like they might do. And again, what we will do is we're going to keep all these metal panels because they will find some reuse. Okay, so the motor's hanging out now. It came out fairly easily, didn't put for 5. Just wondering what rating it is. Okay, it's actually lower power than I thought, so it's about 0.55 kilowatts. It's a 230 volt motor. Obviously it's single phase capacitor start, because there's a capacitor on the side here. I suspect it's probably capacitor start, capacitor run. And the start capacitor is, does it tell us? 16 microfarad. We'll see if we can get these wheels out, that might lose a bit of weight. Sure, that'll come in useful for something. Of course, if any of you do want some parts off this old machine, give me a shout, leave it in the comments, you can have anything you need. Just wondering if the bottom wheel will come out just as easily. Let's find out. Will that come out now? No. I'm guessing we'll have a go at removing this no volt release switch next, because I'm sure this will come in useful on something. Oh, it's one of those high gravity days today. Can you believe it? It's another bloody different screw.
One eternity later.
Patience is waning. Snippy snip snip.
One pair of pants later.
So what I was attempting to show you there, I was actually just turning the air on my compressor, and it must have already been on slightly because I turned it and I actually accidentally unscrewed this nut here, so the whole thing just flew out and hit me in the face. And then this thing, I don't know, I thought it was going to be lost forever somewhere across the garage, but yeah, it seems that I did find it underneath the compressor, but pretty lucky I wasn't injured by that, I think, because it came out with some force. Of course that wasn't going to fit. Of course that wasn't going to fit. Okay, it's Imperial. That doesn't fit.
Eventually.
When you don't have a hole to start with and you're trying to use a plasma cutter to cut through a section of steel, to avoid getting a face full of backwash molten steel, you start with the torch at an angle and then rotate the cutting torch slightly so it's at 90 degrees to the work. That way it's taking the shortest path through the material. I found the video interesting to watch because it shows my technique is quite poor with some room for improvement. In the last video I spent plenty of time bolting this together, so of course it's only logical that I need to unbolt it again. It does of course come apart much easier. My old bandsaw was mounted on these suspension bushes, so again we can go ahead and reuse them. And here's the old base plate that we cut off the saw. So that seems to fit quite nicely, so we've created a nice flat surface for the new saw to sit on, but we've also lifted everything up by an inch, which for me is going to be useful. I'm afraid this plastic coating on here is in pretty poor shape and it's actually started to go rusty under the coating. Now of course if I had the time and the interest I would strip this back to bare metal and repaint it all, but I really can't be bothered. So I'm just going to give it a quick rub over with some abrasive paper and just flash it over with some primer, and I'll worry about painting it another day. So I'm just giving it a wipe over with some IPA, just trying to remove some of the dust and maybe a little bit of the oil. Well, I'm afraid it is still early spring here, and as such it's really quite cold for doing spray work, but again, needs must. So as you can see, I've got the saw assembled onto its stand now. And I've also given the old stand a coat of this anthracite grey. Now I found this can of paint lurking in the cupboard. I think it was bought for some important project that never seemed to happen. Obviously so important I can't even remember what it was. But the paint was free, so that's what we've used. My next job is going to be bolting the new saw to the old stand, so let's do that. Now we've made a mark with the big drill, I'm going to go through with a smaller drill first. This sheet metal is only thin, but it's as hard as coffin nails. We salvaged some nuts and bolts from the old saw, so I see no reason why we're not going to reuse those. The hardest part of the job is definitely getting up off the floor. I think I'm going to have slightly more difficulty drilling these two holes at the front of the machine because I don't have a lot of headroom here to get the drill in. Now I thought that I had some short blacksmith, some stubby drills, but I don't seem to find any of those. So we're going to have to think of a different way of doing it. But let's start off by just putting some marks in here using these transfer punches. So let's do that. I think we may be okay to start with these smaller length drills. Let's see. Is that on top speed? No, let's go a bit faster. Oh, broke the drill. Bugger. Oops, bit of a mistake there. Of course, the joys of trying to work around tripods and things. Not in a very good position for drilling, and yeah, the drill went through and I wasn't able to catch it before it bottomed out. Just really hard. I think it's probably the way it's rolled. Bit of a struggle. To finish off our bandsaw, I did intend to install some of these caster feet on a base so that I can actually wheel it round, because I am limited for space and I wanted to be able to push it out of the way and then pull it into use when I needed it. But unfortunately, bank holiday Monday, I haven't got any metal to do that because I think it needs to be made out of steel. Don't have anything suitable in stock, so I think that's going to be a job for another day. And I think I'm about jiggered this weekend, so I'm going to have a pint and I'll see you next time. Until then, as always, bye bye for now.